Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of Mixed Feelings. I'm your host, Kira Bria. Let's talk about the rise of lonely, single men. So, on August 9th of 2022, Psychology Today put out an article called The Rise of Lonely Single Men. So it says the rise of lonely single men. This article is written by Greg Matos. He writes, dating apps and a drastically changing relationship landscape. Some of the key points are dating opportunities for heterosexual men are diminishing as relationship standards rise. Men represent approximately 62% of dating app users, lowering their chances for matches. And men need to address skills deficits to meet healthier relationship expectations, aka everything women have been saying this whole time, and then the alpha male podcasters rise up and for some reason men listen to them. I understand that not all men, like there actually are men who think that the alpha male podcasters are whack, specifically with like the rise of Andrew Tate, who is like, you know, more than a meme, is like a criminal and has been, I don't know if he's actually been convicted, but he's had a lot of assault charges, like for beating women and assaulting women, and it's like potentially trafficking women. So all of this aside, I think that the rise of lonely single men does feed into alpha male culture, does feed into Andrew Tate, fresh and fit culture, because these men, first of all, fresh and fit guy, what's his name? Melvin, whatever the fuck. And Andrew Tate looks so similar, it's creepy. Right? They look so similar with not just the shape, the Q-tip shape of their head and the balding and literally the structure of their face and their body and the skin tight shirts and the skin tight jeans and the overall anger and tension in their neck because they're not getting any love from women. And so that is where I literally saw Fresh and Fit. He posted something, or maybe it was on his website, and it literally is a whole page saying everything I've ever done stems from hate. I wake up in the morning, hate fuels me. I have a list of my enemies. Like this energy of like, I've never met a loving person in my life, right? That's the energy that they have. I think that makes other lonely men feel safe, or they resonate with that, because this messaging, this alpha male messaging, is not coming from a place of love or a place of someone who has experienced love and healthy relationships. And it's very obviously coming from pain and hate. So I kind of just wanted to go through this article a little bit. The first stanza is talking about dating apps. So, you know, it's interesting because I watched that one guy talking about Datanomics. You know, you might have heard of it. It's a pretty popular book. And he was saying, like at universities and things like that, it's usually in men's favor because there usually are, a lot of times there are less men than women. And so in those situations, like Datanomics is in men's favor. But it's interesting to see that like for dating apps in particular, it's actually women who have the upper hand. I don't think I necessarily expected that. So competition in online dating is fierce, and luckily in-person chance encounters with dreamy partners are rarer than ever. Something I will tell you, the people that I have met in real life and gone on dates with were way stranger than the ones I've met off an app. Like, I met a flat earther in person, and you can't tell if they're a flat earther in person. Did you know that, right? Because there's no profile to say, hey, I believe the earth is flat. And literally, I think it was the second time we hung out, I asked, what's your most controversial opinion? Always ask that, because they will show their ass so quickly. He said, are you sure? I don't know. I don't know if you really want to hear this. He was like, I think the earth is flat. And I was like, based on what? And he was like, well, what proof do we have that it is round? And I said, well, there's like space satellites and things like that. And he said, yeah, but who runs that? And he was basically like, prove it. And I honestly was like, I guess I can't literally prove it to you. It's just something that I believe. Anyways, my point is, you meet weirder people in real life sometimes. Anyways, okay, next stanza. Relationship standards. With so many options, it's not surprising that women are increasingly selective. I do a live TikTok show, shameless plug, this person put, and speak with hundreds of audience members every week. I hear recurring dating themes from women between the ages of 25 and 45. They prefer men who are emotionally available, good communicators, and share similar values. We've heard this before. We've heard this for years. This is not new. I think what's new about it is that it's in an article from Psychology Today written by a man. That's the only thing that's new about this. Skills deficits. This is my favorite part. This is my favorite part of the article because not only are we recognizing that emotional labor and domestic labor is a skill and it's something that is valuable. Emotional intelligence is valuable. But we're also recognizing that this is a skill that men largely lack in. Skills deficits. For men, this means a relationship skills gap that, if not addressed, will likely lead to fewer dating opportunities, less patience for poor communication skills. What they're saying with that is all of us women being like, listen, I know you think that you can get this shit off, but you can't anymore. It's actually to the point where, because finally a lot of women are in the financial position to not need to get married, right? And when we think about, well, I know, we all know, I'm sure everybody who's listening to this podcast knows that there's been research and statistics done on how the happiest women are unmarried. They are single. And how men are happier married because marriage benefits men. And women will continue to surround themselves with love and people who care about them regardless. And women are still likely to have, like, okay, so say you stay single your whole life, you still have friends who are not only nurturing and loving towards you, but they may have children, and then you may have the opportunity to be that kid's favorite, you know, aunt or godmother or whatever. Or if you have sisters, siblings, things like that. Like, women are always needed, and women are always even though women are not valued in society in the way that we think of value, women are always needed. Does that make sense? Whereas men are just not. Like, if you're gonna be unavailable emotionally, if you're gonna be an asshole and a dick, nobody wants you around and nobody actually physically needs you around, if that makes sense. So going back to skills deficits, yeah, so less patience for poor communication skills and longer periods of being single. I think that's why, going back to the less patience for poor communication skills, I see so many men complaining these days about dating. So many men complaining, why don't women want to cook for us anymore? Do you have the money to fully support a stay-at-home mom? No, you don't, because you're recording this podcast in your mom's basement when you should be going to therapy. And we all know that. So do you. But it's just funny to me, like, how many men complain about women having higher standards these days. And it's like, this article kind of just, you know, this lays it out for you. If you don't do better, you're going to die alone. That, to men. And for men, that is a higher stake, because for a woman to die alone, she died happier. She, apparently, it's very possible that she died happier than if she were in a marriage with a man. Men, that's not the case. If you die alone, you're probably sad. So maybe you should pick it up. I'm sorry, I keep going on tangents. Okay, the problem for men is that emotional connection is the lifeblood of healthy, long-term love. Yeah, that is the problem for men. Emotional connection requires all the skills that families are still not consistently teaching their young boys. I think it's not just about families teaching their young boys. I think it's more about, like, this systemic system of patriarchy. I don't know why I had to say systemic system. That's super redundant. And I definitely get confused between the uses of systemic and systematic. Anyways, I think this whole idea of skills deficits is so interesting because, and I was talking about this on TikTok a little bit, I think what a lot of this shows is that even though women have been saying this forever, even though there's an article talking about it, and there's hundreds of articles now, because this is kind of like spread like wildfire across the internet, of women being like, finally, like somebody's paying attention to our wants and needs. Because I think what's crazy for me is that men look to other men for relationship advice and think that women are crazy and wrong, and they think that they can control their way into a healthy relationship. That's the main thing. They think that if they're dominant enough and if they're alpha male enough, they're gonna find someone that not only loves them but does whatever they say, when really you're just becoming a woman repellent. You're becoming a woman repellent. When I see Andrew Tate, when I see Fresh and Fit guy, and they have that same repulsive energy, the tenseness, the harshness, the frown, the spitting. They spit disrespectful words, even regardless of who they're talking to. The hatred, it comes like a fire out of their mouth. And somebody's pretending that's attractive to women who have full autonomy over their lives and their bodies. No, it's not. And that's why you see women, you know, literally walking away off Fresh and Fit's podcast. I don't even know how they got there. That's a whole different story of him like hoaxing people to come on the show via sugar daddy dating apps, and he never pays them. That's a whole different story. But I think the whole alpha male movement, and you know, we already know that the creator of alpha male has denounced the term, and he was just looking at parents, wolf parents. He wasn't looking at the strong wolves. This whole rise in alpha male culture, it's like it's a hissy fit. To me, it looks like a hissy fit of these lonely, unintentionally single men. And it's important to say unintentional, because for women, a lot of women are single intentionally. A lot of women are celibate intentionally, because that they feel the quality of men is just not serving them. And we are in a lot of us, luckily, are in a position financially to not need marriage, but to only enter into marriage if it's an emotionally safe space that feels right and feels like a good decision. But men still, not only do they still have this idea of like, well, I am man, you are woman, you must want to marry me because that's what women do. And then they just like don't think more than that sometimes. And this is not all men. There are some men who understand this. I see them on the internet sometimes talking, but largely the idea is we can control our way into whatever relationship we want. I think that's how a lot of men think, especially with the alpha males. They think, okay, well, we can be dominant enough that a submissive, Andrew Tate is only accepting 19-year-olds, but they think that no matter what women want, they can still get them. And it's like, it's honestly feels like a rejection of consent in a way, like the larger term of consent in regards to they are not concerned with what women want, but they believe that they will get it anyway. And when women say, well, we want somebody who's emotionally intelligent, we want someone who's genuinely kind, we want someone who's thoughtful, we want someone who's literally just not an asshole, they go, you don't want that. You don't need that. You're being crazy. You're too picky. Your standards are too high. You don't want that. You're going to end up with a man anyway. That's where I'm saying the lack of consent, or even just like respect of consent, respect of bodily autonomy and like wants and needs, and just, any kind of autonomy in women's lives. Like the fact that women are like, yeah, whatever you're doing right now, I'm cool about that. And men are like, no. Why aren't you in the kitchen? Why aren't you cooking and cleaning? You're not being a woman. And it's like, you can keep saying that as you're in your mom's basement, SoundCloud rapping and making podcasts, and women will continue to stack their money and build their own societies and not need you. And so this article is basically like a little bit of a wake-up call, like, hey, if you don't get your shit together and start listening to what women actually want, you will be worse off and you will die unintentionally alone. And I think right now we're in this space of negotiation. I find even with men who are, because obviously there's like the extremists, like, alpha male follower men, like the men who really follow Andrew Tate and are commenting in all the women on TikTok's comment sections, what color is your Bugatti? Like his minions, right? But then on the other side of the coin, you have men who call themselves feminist, but still perpetuate patriarchy and refuse to like fully analyze in themselves how they're doing that. And these men still reject the wants and needs of women because they'll say, they pretend that they're feminists, right? But then when you ask them to check how they're speaking to you and to check their misogyny in the nuance of their words, they will tell you that you're overreacting because God forbid you know what you're talking about. And they don't think you're gonna leave. Watch me leave, boy. Bye. Like, and that's something that just happened to me. You know what I'm saying? That's happened to me a few times where you find a supposedly woke man and he's nowhere near as woke as he presents himself to be. And first of all, I don't take that at face value. When men tend to have a hard time being self-aware and tend to have a hard time self-categorizing because to look inward feels like a feminine activity. And to admit that you have emotional things to work on and to even let yourself be emotionally available, emotionally intelligent feels like a feminine thing to them. And I think it feels like a reluctance, or like they're releasing their masculinity to need to go into that kind of thing. And so they're usually kind of afraid of that. And they feel like it's an admission of like femininity, or they're admitting that part of them is not as strong as they thought, and they don't want to do that, right? And so men get really angry when you show them a mirror to who they really are, and strong women do that a lot, probably too often for them to handle. Once you say, hey, I know you think this is who you are, but this is kind of who you are though. Because relationships are mirrors, right? And so when they get very upset about things that you're showing them about themselves, they take it personally and they associate with you rather than just like, you know, okay, let me work on this. It's an ego. It's a slice to their ego. And we know that their egos are already fragile. But you see a lot of men who think that they're there. They think emotionally they're there. They think they're feminist. They think all of these things. But they refuse to give you the space that they allow themselves. They always want to be the one to take up more space to make, you know, the major decisions and to just kind of mold everything. And if you reject that mold, they reject you. Is this making sense? And naturally, there is misogyny when they move in anger and when they move in, when they're upset, like they just naturally fall into that misogynistic place and they say hurtful things and they do hurtful things and they don't even know what they're doing sometimes. And when you call it out, you're the one that's overreacting, and it's like, I'm gonna overreact myself all the way over here, and you can stay over there and continue to live in your delusional bubble. And maybe some insecure girls will put up with that shit, right? But I don't think a self-respecting woman with a brain will. And what this article is kind of saying is, yeah, women are done. Women are done with the bullshit. We're done with the pretending. We're done with doing all your emotional labor for you. We're done with pretending that what you're giving is enough. That's really what it is what, because I've been with so many men who think that they're a certain way, and after their relationships with me, they feel a different way, and then it ends up being, well, I'm sorry I couldn't give you what you needed. And it's like, well, yeah, I guess at the end of the day, that is it. You don't have in you whatever you thought it was. It's about 25% of how you presented yourself in the beginning. I find men tend to present themselves as a certain thing, and they are probably about 30 to 40% of actually what they said they were. If that makes sense. And I think if you're the kind of person to show them that mirror, oh shit. you're not going to be together, because I think they probably do hold a bit, like, they just aren't used to being held accountable, really. Really, 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 they're just not used to being held accountable. And if you really hold them accountable and you don't cut them any slack, it's hard for them. It's hard for them, and I understand that that's an adjustment, but part of me thinks, like, we should all just take a step back for a few years and, like, not even really, I can't put up with it anymore, you know? And I think before, I was at a point in my life where I maybe needed somebody for a reason or another, and I just felt like I needed a crutch to lean on or something. Even though, like, with my last relationship, I wouldn't say that's what was true. I would say, like, I really was interested in this person, and I did feel like I wanted to be with this person, but then pretty early on, I started finding things that I knew I wasn't going to be okay with, and I wasn't going to keep being okay with emotionally. Like, I just didn't feel safe. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel good. And I think for a little bit as a woman, you feel, because of the way this society tells you, oh, if you don't deal with these things, if you don't, you know, society loves the martyr woman who puts up with everything and does everything for everybody anyways, and is just so kind about it and doesn't give a shit, and doesn't hold a grudge, and doesn't say anything about it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not that bitch. I'm not that bitch. I am not that bitch. I saw a girl on Shan Boudram's podcast talking about how, you know, she's a completely submissive woman. She predicts her man's every need. Like, honestly, the way she described her life, it sounded like hell to me. She was like, oh, you know, I love my man. I know him better than he knows himself. I predict his every need, his every move. I make sure he's fed, he sleeps well, all these. And I was like, that sounds like my personal hell, to be treating this man like my literal child. And I just remembered her talking about, like, doing sexual things that she wasn't interested in at first, but she started doing them because he liked them. And that I'm not interested in turning my body into a host to make men more comfortable just so I can be in a relationship. And so far, that's all that's been able to happen in my relationships with men, is that at a certain point, I have to lose my shine and some of my, what I really want to be doing and who I really am, and some of my space, and I can't be my full emotional self. And it's just like, I have to turn into a host to make space for you, because you don't know how to exist with a fully embodied woman. You don't know. You can call yourself a feminist, but you don't fucking know. You don't know how to take a back seat when you need to. You don't know how to just, like, these men don't understand women as full and complete people, and I stand by that. Even if it seems so close. Even if it seems so close. Even if it seems like, oh, I think maybe they do see women as humans and people. And they might see women sometimes as humans and people, but when things get tough, no. When things get hard, they don't know how to give you that space. And they also resent you for not teaching them how to do that, even if you have taught them, even if you've had, like, broken it down for them. This is what I need. This is how you do it. And then they mess up again and again and again. And then when you bring it up, it's like, oh, well, you know, this is new for me. I don't know how to be respectful. Like, what? Like, I'm not here to train you to, like, be a decent human being and not be an asshole. I just am not here for that. And so I really feel like we could just take, like, 4 to 5 years of a step back before I even am, like, and I know I'm talking shit. I know I won't actually do this, but I am trying to, like, stop dating for a bit. But I don't know. I'm a Pisces. I go with the flow. Okay, but it's hard for me because sometimes I'm like, I need this flow to stop. This flow is hurting me. But anyway, yeah, I'm working on it, but part of me in my head is like, okay, if we all just like disappeared from the dating scene for like 5 years and they just like figured their shit out for a while, and we as women, we can just date women and whatever, or we could just be single. Part of me in my head is like, if we just stopped dating men for like 4 or 5 years, right? And then during that time, you know, if you're pansexual like me, maybe you are dating women, non-binary people, or maybe you're just not, maybe you're taking those years for yourself completely, not dating at all, whatever. I think if we refrain from dating men for like 4 to 5 years and then we came back, part of me thinks it might be a little different. It might be a little better, because if they had to like largely be very alone for that time, because men go through long periods of being single regardless, but then if we actually like intentionally took a step back just to be like, y'all need some time to just go to therapy, journal, figure out what's inside you, get more comfortable with like looking inwards without feeling like you're being like your masculinity is in danger, whatever. And then maybe when we re-entered the scene, it would just be a little bit more enlightened in regards to how to not be a dick. I don't know. That maybe I'm naive in thinking that. I think of Catherine Ryan, who was like, ladies, men in your 20s are absolutely awful. Wait till you're 40. Because she got remarried at like 40, and she reconnected with her high school sweetheart and whatever. Yeah, I do think about that. I do think about, if I stop dating for 5 years, am I missing that much? Because I think we're just so trained to date. As women, we're socialized to date men, right? I saw this video talking about like the reason bisexual women end up a lot of times marrying a man isn't just because they all just like men better. It's just you're socialized to date men, and men are socialized to date you. But anyways, I think what I'm saying is I think dating men is just a habit, and specifically for me, it does just feel like a habit to the point where sometimes maybe I'm not always having standards as high as I should, because in the back of my mind, I'm still leaning towards that habit of, well, I should be dating, I should be trying. I should be trying to find a partner. I should be trying to do that. And I think it's just something we're socialized to do, and I think sometimes it feels weird, at least at first, when you're not doing it. But I think I just want to get more comfortable with not doing it. And then I think, like, from what I've seen of like people who have been on like their single journey, like intentionally single women, or intentionally celibate women. Sometimes the people who are intentionally celibate will still date a little bit, but obviously, you know. But I see with these women, when they come out of that phase, they say that not only have they learned so much and they've like healed their relationship with themselves and all these amazing things, but they'll say like their standards are just a lot higher. And it's very, very difficult to break that boundary for them. Whereas right now for me, I just feel like I've been so in the habit of like being in a relationship and then dating and then being in a relationship and then dating. And it's just, I think it's just a habit that I just need to break. And it's like, what would happen if I spent like 4 years kind of alone and then came back to it? How would I navigate it differently? Probably in a healthier way, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts on the rise of lonely single men. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and yeah, I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.